Hey guys, Darren Kai, coach of Wide Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of the Club Preview Series. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing the Gold Coast Suns. And I think today's episode is probably going to be a bit shorter than the usual one, just because I'm not finding a whole lot of relevant players when it comes to their squad. I've only got 5 players that I'll be discussing in today's video. So let's get into it.
All the pain.
Don't you gotta love those trumpets playing? Too bad we don't hear it very often because they are absolute shithouse and will continue to be shithouse in my opinion. So the Gold Coast Suns finished 13th in 2024 after everyone sort of expected them to finish in the top 8 once again this season. They just continue to let us down. No matter how much we want to see them to succeed, they just cannot seem to find their way, even under Dimmer in his first full season. So a lot of disappointment coming from them, and I really don't see much changing in the new year. I know they picked up a few decent players, but I don't think it's probably going to be enough to push them in the top 8. I think a lot of things will have to go their way to really to push them in that way. We saw them struggle a lot last year with away games, particularly. Whenever they were away from People's First Stadium, they lost. I think they had this crazy stat where it was like 10 wins, 10 losses, home and away sort of thing. So they were just super inconsistent when it came to playing at home compared to playing away. So if they're going to make any difference, they have to fix that stat. But that's a mentality thing, and that's quite hard to change, I think. So Dimmer's got a lot of work to do when it comes to the 2025 season. So what else has changed at the Suns, I guess? So looking at their inclusions, they traded in Johnny Noble, who slots straight into that half back role. I think that's pretty obvious there. And then you got Daniel Rioli on the other wing as well. No, the other side of the field in the halfback role. He came from the Tigers. Besides that, they picked up Elliot Himmelberg, which I don't think will feature in their side too heavily unless they. I think he's probably just more depth, so unless they have injuries, then they might pick him. But he didn't really do too much at the Crows, so he won't be fantasy relevant for us now. The only thing else that's new for them is their new logo, which is absolutely trash. So that's things to go off of. Then it's not looking good for them. So hopefully, their only new and better things come for them in the new season. In terms of their trade outs, they traded Rory Atkins to Port Adelaide and Jack Kocius as well to Port Adelaide. Besides that, it was really Levi Casbolt who retired, and Darcy McPherson was delisted, is probably the only other relevant name on that list. So, which Darcy McPherson was fantasy relevant for us not too long ago. I think he averaged 85, 90 only probably 2 seasons ago. So, disappointing to see him leave because I thought he might have made a comeback at some stage. I thought he was a decent player. In terms of what they did in the draft, they headed to the draft with pick 9 and picked up Leonardo Lombard. I keep getting that wrong. I did have it in my head, but I forgot it. Lombard. So he is an option that we will be talking about a little bit later as a bit of a cheaper as a mid. Obviously, we've already talked about a lot of mid rookies, so he's probably be one that will struggle to slot in, but they have him on the forward pocket at the moment on the best 22, so maybe he's going to play as a bit of a small forward coming into the new season. I personally don't see it, but look, I wouldn't be surprised given that he is a highly drafted pick and he's got plenty of talent. So let's get into the players that are on my watch list. So first person, obviously, got to start at the top. Sam Flanders, averaged 108 last season and was probably one of the best forwards for us last season. I think he was only bested by the likes of Dane Zorko, who absolutely had a unreal year. He is priced at 1.1 million or roughly around there. He is the 3rd ranked defender heading into 2025. so next season, and then he's also the 10th ranked player overall. So that just shows you how massive of a season he had last year, where he absolutely tore it apart, playing this really hybrid role of starting in the midfield, then he sort of went back, and then he went back into the midfield again, and then they've even thrown him forward towards the end of the season, and I think that's where we're going to see him a lot more in the coming years. We're playing that hybrid role where he was this sort of 50-50 forward, 50-50 midfield sort of person. So I think they're going to go back to that being the main way of him scoring, because that's what we saw in the back end of the season. But unfortunately, this probably means that he's going to decrease in his average, I think. I think, obviously, we wanted him in that main distributor role, which we saw him absolutely blitz out last season, and we saw him have 163 score where he absolutely just dominated, and he had a lot of other 130 scores as well. So unfortunately, I don't think he's one that I'm willing to start, just because he is overpriced for what I'm expecting him to do, which I expect him to probably drop down to that 95 range to 100 average. So I just couldn't start him, not with considering his not value. When you're really picking these primos, you want them to stay very consistent. And if he's averaging 95, that's probably just pushing towards top 6 defender, but you could definitely pick him up much cheaper towards another portion of the season, as we have all learned. The other thing is that unfortunately he is a defender midfielder, sorry. So even if he does play a bunch of time forward, he's not going to pick up forward status, so that does not help us when we're thinking of our forward line. So bit unfortunate there, but I think the flexibility of having him as a defender midfielder will help us in the long run anyway, just to have a few things chop and change. It would definitely be interesting if people were putting him in the midfield and throwing him back in the defensive stage, later on in the season. But I think personally, I can't start him just for those factors. In terms of his CBA usage, just to quickly touch off that, just to show you what happened, if I can find his name, Sam Flanders. So like I said, he started in the midfield like 50%. Sorry, then he sort of went back to that half-back role, sort of slotted into the midfield a little bit again. Then he went massive in the midfield, and then we sort of saw him forward once again. So it's really hard to tell where he's going to sort of land, but and the conversation that Dimmer has come out and said is that they really wish they had 3 of him, because they really want to use him across the entire ground. So that really shows you that they really want 3 of them, but where is he going to play in 2025? And I think they're probably going to use him more as that Petrarca role, where he's forward 50% of the time and in the midfield 50% of the time, just because he is quite useful in all areas. I think they've brought in enough stocks in the back line to then move him away from that side. So I really don't think that he's going to be able to improve his average by having this hybrid role of mid forward. Even if he was to get a full-time midfield gig, I don't think he's going to be enough to push that 107. Looking at when he was averaging this sort of this high CBA role, he wasn't scoring enough to average what he did. So that really shows you that this defensive role, this main distributor role, is the role that we're looking for. So for me, Sam Flanders is not one I'm looking at currently, but is definitely one that I'll be keeping an eye on the price change, because I'm sure at some stage we'll have him throughout the season, because he's probably going to be around that top 6 defender line. Just before I jump into the next player, I just wanted to quickly mention that the Gold Coast probably have one of the better runs when it comes to their fixture. They have the opening round versus the Essendon Bombers, so they were also quite an easy team, and we're probably expecting them to be in that bottom 6 range in terms of the AFL ladder, which typically means they're easy to score against. And then they also have round 1 against the West Coast Eagles, so obviously another very easy team, expected to be in that bottom 6 as well, if not bottom 3. So that really shows you they have a pretty good run to start the season, and even after their round 2 bye, which is something to consider when you're picking all these players, they also probably have another 3 or 4 week period where they're versing very similar players, very similar teams in that bottom period, where looking at North, Tigers, the Demons, etc., and even the Crows, I think, as well. So they do have probably one of the better runs to start the season. So definitely something to consider. And if they didn't have the opening round, then definitely would be in my considerations much higher. The second player I wanted to talk about was Noah Anderson. You've got to go with Noah Anderson because he is an absolute gun 50% of the time. And I've got to point that out. He is very inconsistent. Loves to go big, but then also loves to go very small. Well, not very small, sorry. Loves to drop a low score when he isn't expected to. So looking at his scores, you can see he's sort of got these highs of 120s and 150s. He's got, 340 scores, but then he's also got these 60 scores. Three scores in the 60s and 2 scores in the 70s, which is very frustrating. And I can probably guarantee that all these scores were away from home. I doubt any of them were at home when they really dominated and where he was probably at his best. So does that leave a bit of room for him to improve in 2025? I think he could improve his average. He has improved his average year on year. When you're looking at this, every single season in his 5 seasons, he has improved his average slightly. So I think he probably could push his average up again, probably to 108, with improving from that sort of away from home and playing better at bigger stadiums as such. But he is priced at 104, so he's going to cost you a fair bit, 1.67 million. So fair chunk of money. He is the 22nd ranked player overall in fantasy, so he's there or thereabouts in terms of his position. He is a 14th ranked midfielder, so a little bit off the ways in terms of top 8 midfielders there, but if he can improve his average, he can definitely push his name much closer to that range. He's easily the first selected mid when it comes to the Gold Coast Suns. Like, just look at here. He is easily like an 80% midfielder and the first one picked. He is just an accumulator. And like I said, he has a very high ceiling. And I think the good thing, like I said, they have a really good run. So if you expect him to go big early on in the season, then he could get you off to a fly. And we are going to get to have a look at it in terms of opening round. So if he goes big in opening round and that fixture is still very nice, obviously leading into West Coast, he could be one that we jump on, assuming that he will go up in price quite nicely and potentially stay at that sort of consistent pace throughout the first part of the season at least. So here's one that's big on my watch list, and hopefully it all get together for him. The next person is not by no surprise. It is one of the trade-ins, and that is Daniel Rioli, if I can spell his name. And I think he's probably one of the more relevant players when it comes to the Suns, and probably one that I'm more closely looking at than any others, just because his potential of what he can do in this very juicy role, which we have seen a lot of juicy scores come from. When we're talking about this halfback role, who's taking kick-ins, we're thinking from last year, Sexton was there, Flanders staying back there as well, and they both just absolutely racked up. They even tried Jeffrey in there for a little while, and they're really searching for that player that can really rack up and be that main distributor, and I think that's going to be Daniel Rioli. I don't think it's going to be Noble, just because I think Daniel Rioli is probably the bigger name, probably a bit more lethal in what he's capable of. So I expect him probably to improve his average. Now, what is probably his cap is the question for me. Could he push top 6 defenders? It would take a lot, I think. I think it would be probably too much to expect him to do that. Just with what he's done in his past. Like, I know he's only been a defender probably for the last 3 seasons at most, and he's always been this consistent sort of 80 average fantasy player. But he really hasn't seen a whole lot of kick-ins. Like, his most kick-ins he had was 59, which, don't get me wrong, is a quite nice amount, but it's not the maximum that he could have. And when we're looking at the Gold Coast Suns, who are the kick-ins? Who took the kick-ins mostly last year? And mostly it was Sam Flanders. I already spoke about him probably moving out of that defensive line, like you saw here. Sexton, I think, makes way. I don't think he plays in the side. If he does, then I expect him to play forward, just because, like I said, I think they've brought in too many defenders. I don't think he'll play there anymore, and we've already seen that he's very in and out of the side. So potentially, his career is over. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Really, it's really going to be coming up to willpower. Does he still get a lot of the kick-ins? How does Weller keep his body fit, and does he get a main gig all the time? What is Yulin doing? Does he also get a gig with these bigger name players? How many mid defenders can they keep in their side? You talking Power, Weller, Yuland. Then you've also got Buderick, that's also there as well. And then you're throwing in your likes of Daniel and Noble in there. So there's probably too many in my eyes. I think you're probably going to take out at least one of them, if not two of them. And I'd probably expect Buderick to be the first one to go, and then potentially that will be Yuland that will go after that. But more than likely, Weller will be injured, and yeah, Yuland will get a gig. So I'm expecting Daniel to become this main distributor, and he can accumulate off halfback. What am I expecting him to average? Probably around that 95 range. I think he can push that quite easily. Just by adding, 3 to 5 kick-ins per game, that's already, say, 15 points right there. So hopefully that's the case. What I was gonna say, like I said, we've seen some big scores, and I think just with the way that he plays and what we've seen him with Daniel Rioli alongside the Jaden Shorts of the world, I think he could definitely, absolutely make this role his own, and I don't see that changing throughout the season. So he's probably one of the more safer picks in terms of what he is. More likely he's going to improve his average slightly, but it's just really that capacity of what he's going to get to. It's really the unknown for me. Moving on to his teammate in Johnny Noble. I keep calling Johnny Noble, but it is just not John Noble. He is priced at 74, so 761k. Similar to Rioli, he was traded from Collingwood after missing out on the Collingwood Premiership, so I think he's a bit bittersweet there. He's down from his average of 2023 of 81, so there's probably some potential that he could improve his average, but with what I'm saying is they've already got so many defenders back there. Is there enough points available for the likes of Noble to continue to improve his average? Potentially that's the case, but I'm not super consistent. I'm not super keen on it at this stage until I see more. I think he's going to take minimal kick-ins. He hasn't sort of shown that capacity unless they really want to try something out and see if he's going to be good in that role, then potentially. But I don't think it's going to be anything significant besides a minor bump here and there. I think his role is going to stay very consistent, where he's going to be this sort of halfback that really is accountable on a player. So that's really what he's renowned for. So expecting him to stay very similar in terms of his average. I just don't see a massive increase for him in 2025. So I'm really not expecting him. Not expecting him to make much of an improve, but I think he can probably get back to 80 if everything goes back his way. So he's probably not one I'm looking at starting just yet. But again, we're going to wait and see what happens in the preseason. If anything changes, then he will definitely become more of a consideration. Before I get into the last player I want to talk about here, I just want to talk about some other players that I considered. Obviously, I looked at Took just to see what he was, if he was going to make much of a difference after obviously being one of the best players back in 2021, averaging 120. I just don't think they're looking to bring him back into that midfield anymore, and I think they've gone past him in terms of him being that main guy and being that main distributor. So unfortunately, I think his time in the Sun's a bit over, and his fantasy days are over in terms of being relevant. I'm sure he could be cheap for us at some stage in the future, but when he's priced at 93 or something like that, I don't think I see the capacity of him going any better. Ethan Reed, probably another one I could have touched on, but he is a key forwards and he played 4 games in 2024 and I think he averaged like 20, so really isn't going to score a whole heap for us and isn't going to generate a lot of cash. I think we have plenty of other options which are a little bit more pricey, but definitely have a lot more potential to go and generate cash for us. Not looking at Jared Witts, I think we have plenty of better ruck options and he's not really priced cheaply. Lockie Weller, I thought one could be one that would be quite cheap, but unfortunately he had quite a decent average in 2023 of like 80, 85 or something like that. So his discount, which was only 12%, only brought him down to like a 74 average. So, which like with the inclusions of Daniel Earl and Noble, I don't probably see him getting back up to those numbers, and it's a huge risk on us with the injury risk for him. So he's one that I probably would avoid if I can. And really, that's probably about it in terms of people that are relevant in this side. I couldn't really find too much else. But the last person I wanted to talk about, and I probably should have got it up because I did not do it, is Leo Lampard. And just wanted to quickly show you his rookie numbers. This is obviously the website that I use to get all my data. So he averaged 107 in the under 18s championships over 4 games. You can see that there. So he really shows you here that he has the capacity of being an accumulator. Averages 26 disposals, close to 3 marks, and he's actually quite a bit of a tackler with 4.5 tackles each game, and also averaged a goal. In terms of the Coates Talent League, he averaged 95 over 3 games, so not a huge sample size, but again, averaged close to 25 disposals, had a lot more marks in this league, up to 6.3, and averaged 3.3 tackles and a couple goals here. So definitely has a capacity to score and has shown plenty of potential to be a fantasy relevant player for us. It's just the question is he going to get game time throughout the year? I probably expect him to get a fair bit. It's just, do I expect it to be instantly? Probably not, and I don't think it's going to be the most friendly role for us, where we really want to see him in the guts, taking these CVAs and being that mid, which is drafted for. I think more likely we'll see him in a small forward role, in which obviously isn't very friendly for scoring. So, and is unfamiliar for him. So, potentially he's probably not the best pick, but we'll have to wait and see what happens for him. He's on the watch list for me and not currently in my team, but definitely things can change. He is 316k, so he is on the pricier side, being that pick 9. So we're really going to be guaranteed that he's going to be playing this prime role and going to be maximizing points for us. But I think that probably does it for today's episode. Like I said, probably a bit of a shorter one, just with a few less names that are relevant for me. If you think I've missed anyone, please let me know down in the comment section. And please subscribe. I'm working pretty hard to get this stuff out for you in this preseason, so I would appreciate the subscription. Yeah, besides that, I'll catch you guys in a couple of days. Bye.